Welcome back to another episode of Career Hunter. I am your host, Jacob Johnston. This week we are going to finish up our interview with the Director of Business Career Services at Iowa State University, Kathy Whelan. We're going to finish our discussion over what you can do if you're still in school, recently graduated, unemployed, or underemployed. There's a lot of great information between this two-part interview, and hopefully this will provide you everything that you need in order to help find your next job. We even take a look at using third-party applications to interact with your social media accounts and to filter only for those that are posting jobs available through social media. So, sit back, watch the interview. You'll find a lot of great information. And of course, if you find all this helpful, don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
Hunkin. And so, moving a little bit further, say the person has graduated now, all right, and they didn't have that, job lined up. They didn't have the job offer, right out, or maybe they're a little bit older now, and they find themselves unemployed, or they had found themselves underemployed. Maybe a minimum wage job. For some reason, it just didn't take off. Like maybe they graduated in 2008, 2009. And we all know the importance of that first job and where you start, and how fast you can progress, up in your profession. So what can they do if they've been stuck in there, 6 months or a year, like that, to get back to showing that they still have the capability, that they can do it, and what they can, whether it's nonprofit, volunteerism, or creative, online activity. What exactly is the best thing for them to do?
Yeah, and that's hard when people are in sort of a stuck spot. That can be very difficult. I think there are ways to kind of create opportunity within your own company, in sort of that same vein of volunteerism outside of the company, and how that might create networks for you, or meeting people, or new opportunities, or additions to your resume. But I would also recommend that an individual volunteer within their company to take on something new, to find areas where they can see opportunity for change or growth, or even if it was something that they had to do by taking on extra hours or what have you, to get yourself out of a stuck space with your manager or your department. Is there something else that you see that you think that you could positively impact? And then pitch that through a proposal to your manager, and how you can still get your job done, but take on another project. I think it's going to be very rare where a manager or an organization just turns you down flat when you have an exciting idea about trying something else that doesn't, require resources probably. But I think that's where you have to become kind of entrepreneurial within your own organization, to try and set yourself apart, or give yourself access to other individuals, or have people see you in a new light, right? But that, again, it can be very difficult, and sometimes it's just, you have to move on from that organization. But I mean, again, a lot of issues. You got bills to pay and whatever else. And if it's not feasible to move on from that organization, then I would be going to, again, volunteer types of activities, nonprofits, community ways that I could network and show my skills through some type of a leadership opportunity within those organizations.
Okay, and as kind of a bit of a background, after I graduated, it took me from December to August to land my first job. But the issue with that was that at that same time, I had a child born 3 months premature. And so,
Mhm.
no daycare would take them for a while because of the monitors and stuff.
Sure.
So, once a daycare, got to the point where they were willing to accept them, I was able to, find something rather quickly, about, 4 weeks, so, and that's kind of, so when talk about my job searching efforts right out of college, I say I got a great education. It only took me a month, just because I'm not counting that. Just because I'm not.
Yeah, and you know what? It's amazing how many, stories and barriers that people have. And I mean, that's absolutely real life 101.
And so, and I don't count all that time that I was, a stay-at-home dad, even though during nap times I was out there, looking. And one of the things, that I think, helped was the volunteer opportunities. And I like how LinkedIn has updated its profiles more and more over the years. And one of the sections that I notice is the volunteer section, volunteer activities. So, for that person that's unemployed currently, going out and volunteering, listing that on LinkedIn. How much are employers, paying attention to that volunteer section and taking it as skills learned for the job?
I think there's a lot of legitimacy in volunteerism, and I think that it's one of the 5 pieces of the puzzle. But there's 4 other pieces of the puzzle, which is your education and training, your experience, your leadership, and your technical skills. So, you have to try to find a way to put all of those pieces together, and I think that's where candidates can be challenged. But I think volunteerism can help, build into those other areas as well, to help make you more marketable. One thing that I've seen candidates do, that I would try and avoid is using specific dates or even specific months on the resume. I really am a proponent of just using years. And if a company needs to know where you were from this time to this time and this time to this time, they can ask you for an application. But it's not your obligation to put those dates on your resume. And sometimes if you're, then having gaps, you really are calling attention to that by how you have formatted it. So, I would avoid well defining that in your marketing pieces.
Okay. And let's say now, moving on into a different scenario here. Someone's looking to make a career change, switching industries and everything. Now, would they go about the same tactics as the unemployed, underemployed person as far as, the volunteerism or, going online and figuring out different ways to demonstrate their qualifications in the new industry? Or do they have a separate set of challenges or tasks that they need to do in order to make that change?
Well, I mean, it is very similar by and large. You do have to do that sort of, lateral thinking about how I look for jobs, more focused on how I go and find people to hang out with that work in this industry, of which I don't have any knowledge. But there is that whole educational piece too, where you're trying to just learn about what is the language of this industry, and what words did these people use, and that kind of education is something that you kind of have to take on first before you go out and start trying to network with people that work in that field. And if it's a field that I came up in, that comes to me naturally. But if it's something completely new, then I have to do a fair amount to educate myself just to be able to talk the talk, right? So that is the added layer that can be, modestly difficult, as well as then getting experience in
Okay.
that.
And so with this, and this is kind of what I'm getting here, but a lot of situations is about the contacts that you have, your network. Whether that's your network from volunteering or networks at companies or, in the end, the opportunities that you have, whether volunteer, professional, or otherwise, is depending upon your network. And one of the things, of
True.
course, that everyone says is the best time to build your network is before you need it. And so,
Absolutely.
we're going to dive a little bit deeper into LinkedIn now, because, we talked about, in the past that the one issue that we keep coming across is how much opportunity do you want to have to make a mistake? And we know that LinkedIn is for networking. However, networking only works by keeping them warm with interaction. So how do you, use LinkedIn in order to keep your network warm, but limit your chances of mistakes?
Yeah, and there is a lot of talk right now about what kind of consistency is appropriate, and I'm afraid that there's not really a definitive answer to that. However, what we talk with our students about is looking at this in terms of it being mutually beneficial. So, what are you doing to help your contacts? And put that in front of what they're doing to help you, right? So I do think that the people that I see that are the most effective and the most well polished in this area, they are doing some fairly regular communication, and it's primarily educational. You know what I mean? They're posting stories that they find to be useful. They are messaging, but it has to be pretty tailored again. They're messaging individuals about a story. I had just had somebody who works for a company in Minneapolis send me an article about, new resumes and things like that. But he sent it directly to me, and that helps me to keep him sort of top of mind. But what is consistency? I think you're probably doing something at least monthly. I think weekly, then I start to wonder, well, how much time do you have? And I think that's another concern that people have as well. I see people make some choices that aren't always ones that make me comfortable about stories that have either a negative tone or ones that have political connotations or, just ones that are a little bit too assumptive about people's opinions. So I think you have to be pretty careful with what you put out there. It has to be somewhat innocuous if you're especially, posting a story to LinkedIn or something
Okay,
that
now
you want
here's
people to
where I
read more
have
about.
maybe a bit of a conflict. Now, we talk about consistency, and this is where I like to use Hootsuite, get that scheduled so I can just bulk it. And the
Yeah.
reason why I do that, and I think the reason why so many people want to try and put out something weekly or daily or whatever, is because as you do, LinkedIn gives you this information like you increased your visibility 39%. And then when you stop posting, that
Yeah,
visibility drops. And so it almost seems like there's a pressure there from LinkedIn to maintain it and to
to
stay
maintain
on
it.
top of that consistency. But to meet LinkedIn's expectations, you're saying that can be a negative to the recruiter. So how do you?
Well, think about the people that you see posting very heavily. Doesn't it kind of cross your mind, how much time do they have to be on LinkedIn? I think there's just it's
Well,
a little bit
and
double-edged.
I would suspect that a lot of people are using schedulers in order to keep that your profile is raised, 30 some percent, and
Yeah.
that is just where I think some of that is going. And
Well, and of course, LinkedIn wants you to post more.
And
I
so, of
mean,
course, they think
that's
if they
their
don't post,
livelihood.
they're not going to be seen. And when the recruiters do their search for candidates with such and such skills, and then also
Yes.
LinkedIn has influencers, and they have their own. Instead of putting a post, you can write a blog post on LinkedIn. How do you see that? From the average you know um, job hunter, and writing those posts versus, the risk of increased opportunities for mistakes.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of our students who are using the blog feature heavily at all. However, I would also say, though, that we are doing a lot of education with students about how to even use LinkedIn. So, the current college student in many cases is not using all features fully, and they're certainly not using the blogging to any great extent. And again, as I've said several times, it's another opportunity to make a mistake. So, if that's a strength for you, and certainly if you're looking for a position in, digital media that requires blogging as a part, you know what I mean? Absolutely. Because that's your strength and a place where you can really demonstrate your skills. But I think for most of our college students,
Okay,
they're not
and then
using that feature.
here's where I get to ask if I've been making a mistake with LinkedIn. With the content being posted, some of the content that I post is videos from YouTube, and they're videos that from experts. One of the channels in which I will post videos from the most is from Gary Vaynerchuk. I figure he's a multiple-time New York Times best-selling author. He has his own media company and
Oh, no.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I question whether or not to post that, because it's not necessarily designed to be professional as it is designed to be engaging with the audience. So I'm trying to figure out, yes, he's considered the leading expert in his field, but yet the video itself may not come off the right way when you first look at it. So is that good, or should I just stick more to articles?
I think that it does certainly reflect upon an individual as to how they view certain types of material and whether it's posted or not. I think that if that reflects your personality and reflects kind of how you look at the world, and you're comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with that. Now, if somebody might, not, appreciate the sort of not completely stiff approach, then I don't know, is that the right company for you anyway? I mean, I start to think about things like that. So I do suggest that people post things that they are very comfortable with in terms of what they might reflect about you as an individual. And if you're comfortable with it and you think that it demonstrates kind of how you look at the world, then I am too. Because if a recruiter is going to hold that against you, I think that's probably not the right place for you. But that's kind of another
A
way to
word
think
of
about
caution
it.
on LinkedIn. If you're sharing articles that you read on your phone, don't assume that the voice to text feature works perfectly. As that has caught me a couple of times.
Yes.
Now, when one last thing regarding LinkedIn, engaging with your network. You mentioned sending articles and stuff, but LinkedIn also provides you that update of a work anniversary or new job and everything. And when you first click on there, it has pre-filled text, and everything. And so I'm wondering, how much should one be engaging in the work anniversary and new job? If they can't tailor their message, should they stick away with it? Or with the LinkedIn's pre-message format, look good, or just be really frowned upon? I mean, what is the proper interaction?
I really think that it's quite common that people are using the canned version, and that doesn't make me uncomfortable. I will say that I don't engage a lot in feedback about work anniversaries and things such as that, but I do as it relates to new positions and new, roles that people have taken, and I don't find that it should have been something more tailored than the standard canned message that LinkedIn puts forth. And I find, you're just updating your network and you're going
Okay,
to hear from a
good.
lot of people when you
Because
do
I was
that.
worried about how much time I'd have to spend tailoring a lot of messages. So. Okay,
No,
so you don't need to worry
I don't
about
think so.
all that personalization. You're just wanting to add value in sharing the information that you learn. And
Keep people up to date. Yeah. Now, if somebody writes to me or sends me a message off of that, kind of prepackaged message, I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to thank them, and maybe send them
okay,
some type of a
and
private message.
so with that, I mean, it's a great way to add value to your network, keeping it warm. You just got to make sure you remember who everybody is. You don't want to send the wrong content.
That can be a challenge. Yeah, that can be. I would also say that we're using the alumni feature very heavily now. And I think that's been another, in conjunction with some of the other features that you mentioned as additions. I think the Find Alumni feature is very useful for fresh college grads as
Yes,
well as
and
experienced
that
job
would
seekers.
definitely be helpful because, of course, if someone's graduated from Iowa State, they're going to have a good positive opinion about Iowa State.
They generally do, and they want to try and help students. They want to try and help people from Iowa State. I recently was looking for supply chain contacts in San Antonio and reached out to 3 people down there, and I think I heard from all of them, 2 for sure. I think I heard from all 3 though. I think people generally do want to help, but I wrote very tailored messages, and that is where you do need to write something tailored. When I reach out to new connections, I am not going to let the canned um, whatever it says, I'd like to connect with you via LinkedIn. I'm
And there
not going to do
are
a canned
some
message there.
features to LinkedIn that came out that I think it's too early to tell whether or not it's going to be useful, such as the portfolio now, where you can put in the slideshow and the videos and everything, and only time
Yeah,
will tell whether
yeah,
that's going to be helpful to you
I
or that.
agree. Yeah, we will not be an
I've been
early
kind of
adopter
hesitant. I've
on
just put
that.
in the education, a picture of the school and then a picture of, GSB, just kind of that. But when it goes down into my actual work
Yep.
history, I've avoided putting those extras in there. And I guess maybe I've taken a little bit of a risk by putting up my disc profile on there. That could, so yeah. So I don't
Hmm.
know if that will,
Interesting.
be signal as a good thing, the confidence there, or if that is just an opportunity for a mistake because I am a very high D and, well, yeah, and so
Well, that's not
we'll
a bad
find
thing.
out whether or not that will hinder me going forward. Now, and as we start wrapping up here, what have you seen as being the worst advice or worst suggestion that you have seen or heard given to recent college graduates or people who have found themselves in a situation where they need to start looking for another career?
Uh, well, I'm very concerned about how, because of technology, I think that some candidates are mistaken that the job seeking process has now become some type of a passive activity. So if I just post my resume to Indeed, or I post my resume to Monster or wherever, that I can just sit and wait for people to contact me, and that is what I should do. So I think that some people, again, have been given sort of a false understanding of how important really these people and relationship building is. And that is as old as the beginning of time, and it just becomes more and more relevant all the time. So it's really about relationship building, and that is what the basis of job seeking is. So I don't want you to think that it's some kind of, again, a technical thing that happens while I just sit there and wait on my computer, because it doesn't. So I think that advice is about, just relying on job boards and relying on waiting to hear back from submitting to some online portal. Other bad advice. One of the things that I have seen with the set of students that we're working with now is they seem reticent to ask for a position or ask for a job, that is somehow too forward or too aggressive. Again, kind of more to that, kind of a little bit of a passive style of approach. I want job seekers to let the company know they're interested, and I will certainly ask for the job. When I work with people who've had a lot of interviews and haven't been successful, that's usually the first question that I'm going to ask them. Are you asking them for the job? And they often look at me with a pretty puzzled look, like, what do you mean? So if people have thought that it's, again, it's too aggressive to tell the company, the more that I've learned today and the more that I know about this particular role, I think I could do very well here, and I hope you'll hire me. I'm extremely interested. I think people are unsure about how direct to be when it comes to asking for a job. And to me, I think it's
as
a very
you
direct
may
ask.
know, as a high D, I have no problems going in and taking charge and asking for that job. And I think you really nailed something there about, people beginning to think that with technology, that job searching has become a passive activity. I know one of the things I was always told is that job searching is a full-time job. You don't just sit on the computer. So when I have done job searching in the past, I've loaded up my resume and I've hit the street, walking around, just trying to see, what businesses are in the area, the size of them, kind of get the scope, see what, possible positions might be available, just to get an idea of what my options were. And then, of course, I had my resume just in case I accidentally bumped into somebody who looked like they were, important enough to be able to hire me, and so I would be able to strike up that conversation and, go, oh, by the way, here's my resume, and nowadays, I can, skip the printing resume and hand them a business card with a QR code to direct them to my LinkedIn profile. And I don't know, maybe I just like technology. I don't know if the QR codes are actually being used on business cards to direct towards LinkedIn or.
They didn't quite catch on like we thought they were going to, but we still see some of them. And I think there's still opportunity there. We saw at our career fairs for the first time some of the, tablet stands and companies having candidates stand at their tablet and enter themselves as a candidate for a position while standing there talking career fairs. So I still think there's some opportunity. They're scanning information on resumes, taking a picture of that, and immediately loading it to their database. So I'm not sure it's going to be QR codes, but it's going to be continued advancement in kind of immediate gaining of information about
I was really
candidates.
hoping the QR codes, because it just seemed easy to fit all the information right there on your business card, and so.
I think because they can take pictures of your contact information and they need students to become candidates through their applicant, system, that I think that as long as they can capture the contact information,
Yeah,
that
because
seems
a
to
picture,
serve the
can
purpose.
be,
But
a PDF file. You can convert picture to text, and that helps them be able to scan the information there. And
exactly.
I think one trend that might be coming up is more and more companies might start allowing you to apply with your LinkedIn profile versus sending a paper resume. And and
Yes.
what is the
Yes, I
one
agree.
best action job hunters can take this week to set themselves up for success?
I would say to reach out to somebody that they haven't met before and ask them to meet, go to coffee, take 15 minutes, meet somewhere. Trying to learn from people. Everybody loves to talk about themselves, who they know, what they know. And anytime somebody would ask me about my profession, can I talk to you for, 15, 20 minutes about how you got to be doing what it is that you do now? I mean, I love that. Absolutely love that. I would never turn somebody down. So I think the one action that a job seeker who's either trying to change their situation or trying to get a position is to reach out to somebody who's doing a
Okay.
job that interests
And
you and ask them if they'll
what
spend
books
15
or
minutes with you.
resources would you recommend for those currently looking for a job?
Well, probably the one, and it's not really a book per se. I mean, it is a book, but something that I think that I've seen candidates struggle with is identifying what their strengths are. So I am using StrengthsQuest and StrengthsFinder very heavily, and if your viewers haven't explored strengths, I really think it is extremely useful for helping you gain language to use in an interviewing situation about how you can sell yourself. So I'm not sure if you've taken Strengths Quest yet or not, Jacob, but it's a very interesting way to think about working with people. And really the gist of it is that let's stop trying to correct individuals' deficits or their weaknesses, and let's focus on playing to the strengths of each of the people on our teams. And it really helps students be able to articulate what they're really good at too. So you'll have to check it out. It's a Gallup product. But that's a really good one. I guess I'm personally doing some stuff on gender issues in job seeking and things like that. So I'm working with Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In book and a few other specific gender issues in job
Okay.
seeking.
And
But that's just what
what
I'm up
is
to.
as we wrap up here, what is the best way for those who have listened and watched this interview to reach out and connect with you?
Sure. Email's always a winner. I'm still a big email user. wielandk@iastate.edu. I am very heavily involved in LinkedIn, although I really haven't been engaged in job seeking for a long time, so my profile isn't exactly complete. I do spend a chunk of time every day on LinkedIn, so I'm happy to take LinkedIn requests. And that
Okay.
would be
Well,
another
I'd like to
really
thank you for
very good
coming
place
on
as
to the
well.
show and talking with me. A lot of great information was provided. And so, again, thank you. And the audience, we'll see you on the flip side.
Great interview, and that's all we have for you today. I hope you have a few takeaways from that interview that you can start implementing right away into your next career search. There's a lot of things that go on in trying to find your next job. And it could take a while, but here's what I want to emphasize, and something that I've come across, recently, is don't get bogged down on too much of the processes. I mean, you can literally spend, almost forever just trying to set up, your systems and processes that you need in order to get to your job search. And a lot of these things, while you can justify as being needed in order to set up a successful search, they can also be used to procrastinate. Because there's always something else that you can do. There's always a million actions that you can take to try and find your next job. And trying to find out which one works for you is going to be the key, because you don't need to do everything. You only need to find, the few things that fit your personality and the career that you're trying to look for. So, with that in mind, as I mentioned, here pretty soon I'm going to be opening up a contact form on the website so that you can contact me with your success story. Let me know, what you did in finding your last career, especially if it was recent, and how much of an income jump you were able to make. We want to hear about how you networked. We want to hear about how you found the open positions. What did you do? What obstacles did you overcome? And that's coming up soon. I'm going to be opening that up real quickly and see what type of information we get in so that we can bring those stories to you. So until next time, take your career search and your job to the next level. Happy job hunting.